Let's get started. I think we have some brilliant speakers waiting for us. So before we begin, I would like to start us by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional unceded territory of Anishinaabe and Algonquin people. We honor their enduring presence and contributions to this land. In this moment, I invite all of you to reflect on the importance of inclusivity, empathy, and understanding. Every interaction we have is an opportunity to build bridges, foster care, and connections. And these connections are to build a more equitable world. By acknowledging the past and honoring the present, we can work towards a future where every voice is heard and every experience is valued. Good evening, everyone. With this reflection, I want to share that my name is Deepa Mattu. I am honored to be incoming chairperson of the Board of Directors at Inter Pares, and it is my privilege to welcome all of you to Inter Pares' 50th year celebration. I was sharing with Esperanza that this is also happens to be my 50th year of existence on this earth. So it is definitely a very special moment for me to think about that this organization was conceived and started in the same year as I was. Inter Pares has a long-standing commitment to working with Indigenous people across the globe. We work alongside movements for land sovereignty, cultural preservation, and survivorship. Our work is rooted in the values of justice, equality, and solidarity. We believe in empowering people to be at the center of their own development, confronting injustice, and implementing locally adapted solutions. As we gather today and we celebrate this moment, we are also very mindful of the current global political climate. It's marked by significant changes and challenges. Around the world, we are witnessing shifts in political powers, ongoing conflicts, and trade wars. In the current climate of intense profitability and obscenity of selfishness, our work holds greater significance than ever. These circumstances underscore the critical need for resilience and adaptability in our efforts. I would like to extend a heartfelt welcome to our members, our guests, our staff team, and board members. A special thank you to everyone who is an outgoing board member and someone who is not right now with us. I want to do a shout out for her, Amanda Dale, our outgoing chairperson, for her exceptional leadership over the past few years. Amanda has guided us. Amanda has guided us with her grace and wisdom, setting a strong foundation for the future of Inter Pares. As we celebrate 50 years of Inter Pares, let us reflect on our journey and impact we have made. I'm constantly inspired by the words of Arundhati Roy. She says, quote, "Another world is not only possible, she's on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." And I hear her breathing on days like today. This quote resonates for me deeply, and it also resonates for me with the missions and the values that reminds us of our efforts every day. Thank you all of you for being here and for your continued support to Inter Pares. I now invite Sam to share her remarks.
Merci Deepa. Bonjour tout le monde. C'est un grand plaisir de vous accueillir ce soir et de vous voir en si grand nombre. Merci d'être venu.
Here, Deepa, I didn't know it was your 50th anniversary because it's the same for me. It was a very special year, 1975. Let me introduce myself. I'm Sam McGavin, and I am honored to be Executive Director of Inter Pares. We have a very rich evening in front of us, before us. We're going to start by a shared reflection by my former colleague Brian Murphy, who spent more than a quarter century within the team. After that, I will give the podium to my colleague Eric Chorette, who will animate a panel with our guest, followed by a collective conversation. I hope that you will stay after we close the evening to continue the conversations, to ask us questions, to share memories with you, and to take a glass of wine with us. I'd like to mention that there is a paying bar at in the room, and the washrooms are in the hallway past the locker rooms, and they are multi-gender washrooms. If you need interpretation, simultaneous interpretation, come.
Une casquette.
Go
If
to
you're not
the,
following anything I'm
go to
saying
the,
whatsoever, this is your moment to go outside and to go get a device to listen to the interpretation headset. Nous prendrons des photos lors de l'événement. Si vous n'avez
During the event, if you're not comfortable with your picture being published, just cross your arms when you see the photographer, and you will understand that you will have to keep you out of all pictures published. Also outside, there is a copy of our events policy. If anything happens that makes you uncomfortable and that you need anything, please come and see me or go see Deepa, our chairperson, to let us know your worries. Talking about tables, there's also a table with pictures and memories of our 5 decades of advocacy. I encourage you to check it out. Now, I'd like to invite my colleague, Brian Murphy.
Well, to start with, I suspect that no one would be more surprised that we're sitting here today than a few folks who 50 years ago stared at each other across a kitchen table on McLaren Street in downtown Ottawa. They were imagining a homegrown Canadian NGO with a difference. And they were wondering what to do to start with. I doubt that they would have predicted its trajectory or what it is today. They were focused on the present and what could be done in the moment. And what they imagined, as I understand it, was open-ended. And certainly they could not have imagined, let alone predicted, the world as we are experiencing it in these times. Nor could they have anticipated many of the momentous world events and transformative changes that have unfolded in the long road that brings us to this point. Now, the folks who came later did not inherit enterprise from these pioneers or from the earnest stragglers such as me and a few others in this room who joined the journey early. In the spirit of open-endedness, newer generations engaged with the organization as they found it when they arrived, in its ongoing life and historical process. They honored it by that engagement and by continuing the process. This is true of those who joined the staff in the 80s and the 90s and later, and it's true of the current staff. Today, we recognize and acknowledge this great tradition, the founding generation, and the folks that contributed to it over the years. At the same time, it is the current team of Inter Pares I would like to especially honor, along with Inter Pares counterparts and friends around the world, some here with us this very evening. It is these folks, current staff, board, their colleagues in Canada, internationally, who sustain Inter Pares. These folks represent Inter Pares' mission in the world and make it what it is today, half a century down the road. All of us in this room are grateful to you. Thank you for what you do. In my remarks this evening, I'm going to try to capture in broad strokes some of the elements that make Inter Pares what it is. Not its history. There are many histories. And certainly not a linear narrative. That would be flat and sterile, and the story is impossible to capture in any case. But here we are, Inter Pares, at 50. How might we describe its enduring qualities? What are its durable principles and practices? What are the qualities that capture the itness of Inter Pares? Inter Pares was conceived as an organization rooted in Canada and Canadian communities and realities. It was conceived as internationalist. It aspired to relationships and action by Canadians in Canada and in the wider world in international solidarity and common cause. Not merely giving, but sharing and receiving. Not merely helping others, but engaging in joint action in mutuality of interest. Connecting issues far away to issues in our own places and lives, recognizing our fundamental interdependence with others on the planet. Relationship-based, and always with an eye to incipient movements with which to engage deepening and broadening action and advocacy at the local level and internationally. From its founding, of course, Inter Pares had some very ambitious projects in mind. But as I said, it was conceived as open-ended, based in action and exploration. This open-endedness was rooted in its very conception and name, Inter Pares, among equals. It was a mission conceived as a dialogue in mutuality and shared experience and shared learning, iterative and unfolding. As I've described it elsewhere, a possibility in process. From my perspective, this is the thread that is weaved through Inter Pares from its very beginning, and that endures today. Inter Pares is a learning organization, intentionally bred in the bone from its very conception by those who created and developed the organization. Inter Pares' core modality has been as a learning organization engaged in change processes with counterpart organizations, learning with them, learning from them. This modality has been emphasized, elaborated, and enhanced over all these many decades by those that followed. If there is a founder's legacy, I believe that this is it. We can be grateful for their insight, as we are grateful for the courage of their leap in faith in launching this journey in the first place on such uncertain waters. Now, I could also describe Inter Pares as knowledge-based, which is more conventional. I emphasize learning because useful knowledge is rooted in learning. Learning as a continuous, active principle. Even as current knowledge is applied, we understand that action will transform our knowledge. And that learning is inherent in our action. I also emphasize learning because from the outset, Inter Pares was intensely committed to promoting learning, to public education and action research, committed to the process of creating knowledge and sharing knowledge systematically. From the earliest days, Inter Pares launched risk-taking ventures such as the syndicated radio program Sounds Different, with Elizabeth Gray as host, and the school's publication project, Common Heritage, which produced innovative global studies material that ultimately won official Ministry of Education approval for use in Ontario primary schools. A farmer-to-farmer exchange among small family farmers in Eastern Canada and the Eastern Caribbean was a classic early venture in shared common cause international action research. Its preoccupation with rural development and appropriate agriculture continues in Inter Pares programming today. I came across an example of this element of shared learning and knowledge internationally very recently, related to work done in Bangladesh. If there is a country that comes to mind from very early days, it is Bangladesh. Inter Pares' long association with that country, begun from day one by Ian, has been maintained uninterrupted for 50 years. Now, of course, I'm talking here of Ian Smiley, a co-founder of Inter Pares, in whose kitchen on McLaren Street those very early conversations I spoke about occurred. And we are honored that Ian has joined us here tonight. He's somewhere in the crowd. A few weeks ago, a friend, Jai Sen, sent me a note to tell me that he had found a document related to Inter Pares' early program in Bangladesh. He was going through material related to his years as a member of a social action organization in Kolkata, and found a report related to the struggles of rickshaw pullers in the city. It was dated January 1992. The organization had been unable to find documentation in India on the design and engineering of rickshaws, nor comprehensive analysis of the rickshaw trade in the prevailing socioeconomic conditions. I quote from the report Jai shared, quote, "The nearest thing we could get was an excellent study of cycle rickshaws in Dhaka, done by Inter Pares, a Canadian-based non-governmental organization working in Bangladesh, and later an equally excellent report on a new vehicle design developed at Camilla, Bangladesh, by Fred Wilkie. The Inter Pares study referred to is dated Bangladesh, April 1983. Fred Wilkie was a brilliant Ottawa-based bicycle wizard, hired by Inter Pares as a consultant to work with Kabila to help untangle the rickshaw design problematic that had been identified in the original Inter Pares report. The results of that work ultimately made it all the way to India a decade later. What goes round comes round. I think that the light really went on for me, the extent to which knowledge creation could and should be at the forefront of our work. It was when the first box arrived on Arthur Street of copies of a small paperback, its yellow cover with two iconic stalks of golden wheat weaving across the title. That book, Seeds of the Earth, by Pat Mooney, was published in 1983 by Inter Pares in cooperation with CCIC in Canada and ICTA in Europe, shepherded by Tim Broadhead, as Tim quietly shepherded so many things back in those early days. Tim, of course, is co-founder of Inter Pares, and I'm not sure whether he's here today, but he was with us. Seeds of the Earth launched a movement whose incredibly rich history of international solidarity and activism continues today, as does the work of Rafi, now ETC. And all these years later, Inter Pares remains central to that movement internationally, and in Canada under the rubric of food sovereignty and agroecology. And not surprisingly, Inter Pares has maintained its strong relationship with ETC, begun all those many decades ago. That durability of relationship, that commitment to joint learning and action, and that loyalty in times of triumph and trouble is the signpost of Inter Pares, acknowledged throughout the sector, in Canada and internationally. Now, rather than get trapped in a litany of references to long past programs, actions, products, events, people, I'm going to take a stab at defining Inter Pares' work as it has evolved. What is it that Inter Pares colleagues actually do and have done for a very long time to carry on as a learning organization doing very useful things with very interesting people? Inevitably, such a description will be subjective. This is a personal perspective based on experience, I hope not too far off the track. In the time I was part of the team, and my observation is this remains the case, we thought of and referred to our work as programming. This implied a fluid, iterative process of learning and doing with others. Rather than focus on program as a noun, we focused on its character as a verb, as an intransitive verb at that. Rather than conceiving a program in the abstract and then implementing it in the world, we considered that our work was to program with others, acting together to make the world. It is an inventive and collaborative process, continually inventive. And if the program was anything, it was that relationship of working together. It took on concrete form in local organizing, in community actions and formations, and often in international advocacy, which unfolded and transformed over time. In all of this, the mutuality and reciprocity of our relationships was the core element. What Inter Pares colleagues do is seek out such relationships, build on them, and sustain them, with the prospect that the relationship will be durable and lasting, that they will be open-ended, flowing and evolving, that they will be continually transformed with events and the lessons of time. That process begins with paying attention. It begins with learning, with listening, We are the students of our counterparts, learning on the ground. This process follows an inductive rather than deductive logic, starting with experience. In a keynote address I made in 2000 at an OECD DAC consultative conference on poverty alleviation, I called it Thinking in the Active Voice. I quoted a poem that began, "The poor don't know much about praxis, reflection, and action, but they sure can think on their feet." Enterprise program relies on an inclination and a capacity to think on our feet. I think of this process not as simply moving forward over time, but cyclical. Not a circle, which is closed, but a spiral which often cuts back on itself, revising, but progressing all the same. An image of the double helix comes to mind. This may be too grand an image in this context. I think it comes to my mind because of the association to the process of life. And the goal is to build living relationships, and we build relationships by living them. It is a process both personal and political. This is not an empty slogan. Our relationships with counterparts very often develop in deeply personal ways, and over time, there's a natural variability in the depth and quality of the relationships. But certainly those that have been most durable have had a quality of political and personal reciprocity that is treasured. And the best of these relationships became relationships with Enterprise itself, as an organization and as a community. So summarizing, Enterprise work is rooted in relationships and shared action and learning. The action in which it engages with others is not a deductive process of think and do. It is a process of thinking while doing. And especially, it is a process of thinking while doing with others. It is a process that is not only seated in community, but produces community. Not only rooted in social relations, but that produces and nurtures such relations. It is, in a real sense, a reproductive process, a life process, life-giving, life-sustaining, life-promoting. What modalities then, what tricks has Enterprise developed over the years to embed its work in relationships? I have to say at the outset that money, cold hard cash, was not the main currency of Enterprise brought to relationships. Enterprise never had the financial resources that its counterparts could often find from other international sources. And we had other instincts than to grow in that direction in any case, even if there had been the prospect to do so. What did Enterprise bring then? Well, when it came to money, while there was not a lot of it, it was still a treasure. Because as a rule, Enterprise's approach was to ask, if you had the resources, what would you most want to do that you can't do now? And then put heads together to figure out how to get the resources required. The money, talent, information, fellow travelers, whatever. In that way, we became collaborators and learners about the organizations, about the realities within which they worked and with which they interacted, their analysis, and their real aspirations. The idea was to be a strategic collaborator, a co-conspirator, as we perhaps would say now. This creative and flexible approach is ever so much more difficult to achieve in today's reductionist funding regime. But my impression is that Enterprise still manages to do it pretty well. Beyond these relationships with counterparts in various countries, nothing, I think, has characterized Enterprise programming strategy more than an emphasis on the building of coalitions, strengthening and amplifying actions through collaborative structures, building out in concentric circles from local to the national, the regional, and the global level. The focus moves beyond supporting community development to contributing to processes of community organizing. Collaborate, connect, collect, convene, build alliances. I have always thought of this as Enterprise spinning and weaving, after a poem I love. For Enterprise, this implies thinking constantly in terms of leverage, seeking ways of leveraging its few resources, not just money, usually not mainly money, to start a ball rolling, then quietly nurturing the process as it rolls along. The principle, Never do anything alone that we can do better with others. Guided by the conviction that there are precious few things that anyone can do better alone and on their own. Inter-Pares history has been collaborating in support of local, national, regional, and international formations, nurturing ones that already existed and the creation of new ones where necessary. And if Inter-Pares has a reputation for anything, it is for quiet leadership within these structures, low-key, collaborative, putting aside institutional ego and profile to accentuate the collective. An element in this, I think, is that Inter-Pares from very early on saw its role working in and through cultural action and seeing social and political action as cultural action. What do I mean by this? I mean that the situation and dilemmas that people face, the communities face, are rooted in society and in culture. And their authentic responses are social and cultural. Wherever we work, and whatever the issue that has been joined, the social and cultural fabric is under threat. And the responses of people and communities are social and cultural responses. This very fact is their strength. This strength needs to be acknowledged and accentuated in all our actions as they unfold if they are to be effective and durable. Finally, then, a word about Inter-Pares as a feminist organization. Feminism isn't an ideology, much less a brand or a label. For Inter-Pares, feminism has been an analysis, specifically an analysis of power relations, gender, race, and class, and their necessary transformation. Feminism is also, importantly, a practice. Inter-Pares does not engage in this practice because it is feminist. It is feminist because it engages in feminist structural analysis and practice. Inter-Pares is feminist because it prioritizes the subjectivity and agency of women, among others marginalized groups. Attention to women's agency and sensibility and subjectivity guides Inter-Pares in its engagements and its actions, regardless of the issue, the goal, the unique qualities of the diverse communities and organizations with whom it works and shares common cause. Now, to be clear, Inter-Pares was not born feminist, or within a feminist analysis and practice, and did not describe itself in this way at the outset. But it certainly was created and founded on those instincts. And among the early pioneers of Inter-Pares, staff and board were leaders in the development of feminism as an axis of social and political action in Canada and internationally. This process was reinforced as Inter-Pares formed common cause with dynamic feminist pioneers from the Global South as collaborators and as fellow travelers. Let me just say in closing that Inter-Pares has made a conscious decision over the years to devote time and resources to internal reflection and documentation on its experience and methodology, including, among many other elements, the feminist character of its work. A treasure from this commitment can be found in a series of occasional papers, learning circle reports, presentations, and other research documents. These remain a public resource accessible on the Inter-Pares website. Don't hesitate to browse there. I hope that my comments and the panel discussion that you will hear next whet the appetite. Thank you.
Merci, Brian, pour ces belles réflexions.
Thank you, Brian, for this wonderful souvenirs. I always thought about Brian as the in-residence poet. So I'm inviting Eric Charette, who's going to handle the next program.
J'aurais dû mentionner, so if you're using interpretation headsets, then channel 1 is English and channel 2 is French. Donc, pour les canaux, c'est numéro 1 pour l'anglais et numéro 2 pour le français.
Hello, hello.
Hello there.
Oh my gosh. You're beautiful. Enter Paris at 50. Quite beautiful, no? Amazing. Beautiful community. Brian, thank you so much for your words. And I'm so excited to be here tonight with these amazing activists, co-conspirators of Enter Paris, who are incredible activists in their own right and the work that they do in their own contexts, but who have also left their mark through their collaboration with Enter Paris over decades. We have Mariam here from West Africa, from Burkina Faso. We have Dr. Sylvia, also known as Guy, she prefers Guy, from the Philippines. Esperanza Moreno, originally from Colombia, activist in Canada as well, and Jamie Neen, very active around resource extraction. You can read the bios in the programs that you've received, but the shared history that we have is quite amazing, and I'm really honored to be here tonight. I should have introduced myself, Eric Chouret. I'm a program manager at Enter Paris. I am also 50 years old, celebrating my 20th year at Enter Paris as well. I mean, wow, it's gone by really quickly. And it's amazing. So let's get into the origin stories of these relationships. And when we're going to be talking, we'll be hitting on a lot of the points that Brian raised. He mentioned long-term relationships. He mentioned feminism. He mentioned local agency. So these are all very important characteristics and principles that are key to Enter Paris. And so let's get started here. Mariamé, so people who make sure you have your earphones on, because I'll be switching from French to English, English to French. Okay? Donc, Mariamé, un plaisir d'être avec toi ce soir.
My pleasure to be with you tonight. Thank you very much for having made the trip from Burkina Faso to be here with us tonight. So the first question is, how did you learn about Enter Paris? Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm very happy to be with you tonight because it's a great honor to be invited amongst all the friends, partners of Enter Paris. It's me who was chosen, so it's a great honor, and I thank you immensely for this recognition and this consideration that you gave me. So I brought to bring a lot of sunshine from Burkina, because it's 42 degrees in Burkina Faso right now. So you see, I came with the sunshine, as you can see. So how did I know about Enter Paris? This has been, since 2006, so it's been almost 20 years. So that was in Sudan, in Khartoum, when I was coordinator of the NGO, Cooperation and Research Development in Burkina Faso. And I was invited to a general meeting of ACAO in Khartoum. There I met Eric, Caroline Boudreau, and Monica, who was over there. And we exchanged phone numbers, we worked together. And after that, I was introduced to, I was Enter Paris, and then gave me a fly on that in that regard. So when I went back to my room, I read over there. I said, "Listen, this is a group where I would like to work with. You see, because we had the habit in those years to have cooperations of SIDA in Burkina Faso and other organizations, Canadian organizations, but it wasn't like what was written in this Enter Paris flyer. So I said, this is in respect of partnership, of projects that we are going to propose. So this is a group with which I would like to work. So that's how I discovered Enter Paris. And when Eric went back to Canada, we continued to exchange emails a little bit. And after that, things have changed. So listen, wait for the ending. Stay tuned, I would say. Thank you.
And Guy, what is your origin story with Enter Paris?
Actually, for my organization, we're celebrating our 30th year. And thank you. And Enter Paris has been with us from the very beginning. And I was here for their 30th year. And I can't even remember how many times I've come because of Interpares to work with them here as well on learning exchanges and other work, co-conspiratorial work.
Yes.
But what is also important to me is that I'd heard of Interpares before we even became counterparts, because some person named Peter Gillespie was working with many of the human rights organizations who were fighting the Marcos dictatorship. And I come to know this about Interpares in other countries, but the international support that was given to us during the darkest period of our own history was crucial to its to overthrowing the dictatorship. And I know of this, of Interpares, that they do come in moments of great vulnerability to help, but they stay on and on and on and on and on. And so after Peter, there was this Karen Seabrook. And then, hi Karen. And then of course there was Rita, and then David, and so many people. And I've been meeting people I knew through the years here now. I thought it would be a reunion for you guys. It's also a reunion for me. Yes. So I'm very happy to be here, and that's my origin story.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you. That's great. Esperanza, est-ce que tu aimerais partager ton histoire de comment tu as connu Interpares?
Oui. Écoute, c'est une histoire qui date.
Actually, that goes back to 30 years, I would say. And I started when I got into the CCE administration. Today, we know as Corporation Canada. That's what it's called today. So CCE, I was member of the board of directors in 1995. So Interpares was one of the groups around the table with which we were working. So afterwards, I came back. I became a general director for 12 years. Interpares was one of the members, one of the very active members, very involved within this coalition. And after that, over the years, I became more involved with PCS, Project Counseling Services. That was a group that was created on the main part by Interpares and other participants at the international level. So I got to know Interpares through its relationship with South America, Latin America, the way it worked and how its methodology, as Brian was saying, the way they work and that kind of stuff. So this is what PCS do, because it was a major influence of Interpares within the PCS activities. So from then, I've been a member of the board of directors for 9 years, and I've been able to see another side of Interpares, board of directors, how things are decided, how we come to consensus. So all this experience, that's what I got from this, and that's what marked this group, makes it unique in this sense. So there you go. Thank you very much, Esperance. Thank you for your service of Interpares. So she's ending her tenure here. Thank you very much.
And Jamie, what's your origin story with Interpares?
So I actually have two.
Oh.
The one, the formal one is about how a little bit more than 25 years ago, my organization, Mining Watch, has just finished its 25th year, so we're halfway there. And so 26 years ago, we were working on solving a problem that was emerging across Canada in different dimensions with Indigenous peoples, with environmental issues around mining, and globally, because the Canadian mining industry was such a presence everywhere. And many international organizations were coming back and saying, the people we work with on the ground are having a problem with the Canadian mining company, and when we don't have the expertise and we don't have the background to respond or to engage with that, what are we going to do? And so we set about creating a response to that, which was in conversation with among other people, several people at Interpares, through at CCIC, at the Americas Policy Group, at the Africa Canada Forum, talking about how to do this in a way that would link communities, that would be able to share those experiences and learning across borders and internationally and across disciplines, and share experiences and share expertise and share strategies and build a common response to a common problem. And we've been very close to Interpares ever since, but it was actually Interpares that I think was the first formal backer of the Mining Watch project, and said, no, this has to happen. You know, we'll put a modest but significant amount of money on the table, and that will give us the opportunity to go to other funders and build something that incredibly has lasted 26 years. But that wasn't my first exposure. My first exposure was actually a decade earlier, as I was finishing my undergraduate degree in biology and went to talk to, because I was going to travel to the Eastern Caribbean, went to talk to Jean Christie at Interpares about what I might learn while I was there, and got connected with the Eastern Caribbean Natural Areas Management Program, which was an Interpares partner. And I was there for a week, and I learned a whole lot about different approaches to development. It was classic. You know, we had a locally based project right next to a directly CETA funded project. One was a shambles because it was run remotely, and the other was gorgeous because it was run locally. And it was based on participation and knowledge. So, you know, it reinforced everything that I was probably already programmed to suspect about the world, but it set me up for, you know, a lifetime of this activity. Yeah, thank you.
Wow. Thanks, Jamie. And I want to acknowledge Brewster is in the room. Brewster Neen, Jamie Neen's dad, and the whole Neen family has been extremely important to Interpares' trajectory, its analysis. Yeah. Wow. So now we know each other a little more. You know them. You know a bit more of the history. One of the themes that Brian was mentioning was feminism. Donc, quand tu décrivais Interpares, Brian?
Paris, you spent a lot of time to describe the enterprise here, the enterprise, your feminist analysis. I would say something that's very important, Interpares, knowing why it exists and that kind of thing, and the way to fight all these issues. So that's a question of justice. But here we have a major feminist, great feminist, champion feminist, I would say, within the room here. So it's a term that we use, and we're very complex when we use this term, but something that's very important for us. And we're going to continue to defend feminism. I would like to ask Mariam how you view feminism in your work within your West African communities, how the approach on that and the work that you've done in this regard to be able to fight inequalities and transform these relationships as you did. Thank you very much, Eric. It's a question which is very important to me because I come from a country where patriarchal approaches, social systems, socialization, that kind of thing, and the supremacy of the man over woman in every way possible, or the various ethnic groups. So this is a system which is prevalent. When we talk about patriarchs and we talk about values and beliefs and interdictions which maintain the domination of the woman by men. Me, I was a victim myself in my childhood, I don't think we have enough time to talk about that. So we have to fight. Women have to fight to free themselves. But how to do this when the entire society is organized in this way? So we have to find strategies to go around this, to break up and rebuild, not through violence, but with tricks and subtlety and with strategy. So what was happening here? First of all, women had to understand what patriarchal approaches were, because having been raised within this concept, things became normal, see, but it's not normal per se, because we are citizens like every other man, and our rights have to be respected, and we should enjoy our lives as we should. So we have to talk about the discovery of the farm to get them to understand the issues and how patriarchal approaches should be approached, and to break them up and rebuild something else to be able to move ahead. So in this way that we give information, we give training, and we bring people to organize themselves, because alone it's very difficult to achieve all this. So we get together, we help each other, and because one hand cannot grab a tire bundle as such. So we create organizations to influence leaders of our various communities who are these foundational cornerstone of the society, or religious groups, and who maintain women in this kind of subdued position. And the few men that were identified within the community who were open men, progressive men, who are not enclosed, and who worked to make sure that patriarchal approaches shouldn't be a weight on women. So those are our champions right there. We don't use the word feminist as such, because it scares people within the context of our country. When we talk about feminism there, we have the impression that it's somebody who wants to eliminate all men. So that's what it is right there. So in order not to scare people and to create obstacles, we avoid that term feminism. So we talk instead about working so men and women should help each other to build the family, the community, and the entire country. So men are more receptive to that concept, and we are able to identify men, very open men, who instead of using their privilege to dominate women, they use that to create conditions to make sure there's more equality and equity between the women and men. So we call them feminist champions as such. These are all these positive masculine men who help us, who help all the women groups to work to influence policy and leaders and people within the community and other men to effect change, so we can have progress as we should. So when we have these kind of people, these champions as enterprises who come to help us, this makes us move ahead. And today, we can say that we have reached a level of comprehension, of engagement, and fight and action, which changes the situation profoundly. So we say that women are changing this situation. Women are the torch bearers to make sure that equality should be foundational in our country and to proceed, to go across the entire West African region. So we are in cooperation with other female movements to change the situation. And that's what's happening on the ground today. And I'm very happy to have contributed to all of that, because I gave a lot of training on equality or gender equality, worked with various groups to transmit messages, and we train people, men and women, to be able to plead for this, to raise the alarm with their leaders and those who take decisions, so they can understand women cannot be a second-class citizen as such. The woman has to be at the same equality, the same footing as a man, whatever, irrespective of the social norms, and that's what took root, and we're working to make sure this is the case, that young people should understand that this is going to happen, and that's what's happening, and we shouldn't stop as such. So that's what I can say quickly on this subject, because we don't have too much time. Otherwise, there are a lot of examples that I could give to you to demonstrate what's going on on the ground. I've gone through various situations, lived various situations as the daughter of a family of 12 children, the fifth of those. So that led me to fight. And because of my studies and my meeting people like Eric, Fernando, and all the rest, I can assure you that this gives me the motivation to continue to fight and to bring other women to fight so that we're not against men. You understand that. Those are our partners. We need to work hand in hand to work together. So that's the message that we're trying to pass across. And I'm sure that's going to go across in the middle of all people like you. So thank you very much, Inter Pares, for having accompanied us this far. Thank you. There's going to be a moment afterwards where you can continue to talk about this because Mariam is a great example who worked on this. And this is very useful for women to see the kind of work she does, the kind of training she does in West Africa. So this is something that women can access and be able to work on this.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Guy, you're working on some very interesting things in the Philippines. It's a context that's also quite challenging, I would say. There could be some conservative influences, the church, and you're working on women's health. So I was wondering if you could share with us a bit of how your struggles for equality and your feminist struggles in the Philippines, how that expresses itself in its work around women's health.
We are a sexual and reproductive health and rights organization in a muscularly Roman Catholic country, the last country in the world without divorce. Malta used to be with us, a Catholic suzerainty, but now we're the only ones. And my background was coming from a progressive but gender-blind health movement. That was also an underground movement that had a very strong component of rebellious liberation theology, but Catholic priests. So that is the context in which we continue to work. And it is also the context which we see in the world today because patriarchy has this whack-a-mole quality, right? It's back! So in my country, our former President Duterte is now in The Hague, facing crimes against humanity. And I'm yet to meet a criminal against humanity who also isn't very sexist. So I wish they had a section in The Hague for crimes against humanity, because our president was horrible as well. So that's the context we work in. But our clinics are not standalone. The core of our work is to make sure that the community, women, are organized around the 10 clinics we now have, mostly in urban poor settings, but also in very remote rural settings. Because any technology is prone to the same inequities and oppressions unless the community takes it in hand and makes sure that that technology, our clinics, the services we bring, are equitably, properly distributed. They guide us to make sure that our patient relationships and the quality of our care does not disempower women. And we know this, that long waiting lines and mean personnel and people and richer doctors who look down on the poor may give you the health service, but it's not going to be empowering for anyone. So we're very careful around that as well. Our community-based health workers are also the leaders of our organizations that are organized to oversee our clinics and mobilize the community. And they are some of the best trained health workers that we could have. In fact, government health workers are very envious of what we are able to train our health workers to do and what they are able to do. The heads of the organization sit on our board. So our board has representatives from the organizations of these clinics. We also have a youth organization because we've started an adolescent youth program. So these are Gen Z. So we've had boomers, like me. We've had millennials. And we've had Gen Z now, and even younger ones. So it's also a multi-generational effort. I could go on, but one thing I will raise is that our first generation boomer mothers were already organizing their children when they were adolescents. And that's how modern day issues like LGBTQ came into likhaan, because that generation that we first began organizing were already looking into those issues of sexual reproductive health and rights as well, right? So in our setting, we don't have much of an intergenerational conflict on some issues. And just for your amusement, so our mothers, our first generation of boomer mothers, we brought them to the first Pride March, right? And they saw these beautiful women in, well, trans women. It doesn't really apply in my context, but let's use trans women. These beautiful trans women in drag. And they all rushed to the front so that they could see them. And so the picture comes out the next day on the major newspaper, Pride March, and they're all our community women standing there looking amazing. So we had to say to the Pride March organizers, we didn't mean to take your branding, we just got excited. So there's that as well. But I must say that now the olders and the younger ones are in dialogue, because we keep telling our young people there is identity, but please don't forget class. So we're in that kind of learning dialogue as a learning organization as well. So and we organize women. We're always in community. So I think maybe the double helix DNA that you were talking about, our DNA seems to be quite similar, right? So that's what we think about having met with Interpares. Our instincts and our DNA seem to be doing just fine. We're almost the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. It's so exciting to hear you name class.
Class.
Did you say
Don't forget
class?
Class. You know.
Yeah, so that's
Especially for young people in poor communities, we do get a little bit upset if they're just thinking identity. It has to be identity and class.
it's a good segue to the next question. Notre prochaine question ou le sujet de discussion.
Our next question, topic, is the approach. We work in solidarity with people of the world. We work in Canada as activists in advocacy, but we also work hand in hand with global organization in the South. So the idea to do charity work is something that we reject. Even the concept of development, Interpares as actually a very acidic critic of this concept that erases all the colonial past and ignores the context of countries. So it's something that makes us angry and that we have to undo. And I believe that Jamie and Esperanza are going to talk to us a little bit about your approaches. Maybe Esperanza, if we can start with you. I know that yesterday you were talking about when you were at the CCCI and you met Interpares, you could see how they worked, and there was a very different approach. So can you tell us more? So when you work with a coalition of almost 100 organizations across very diverse countries, big, small, unions, more progressive, less progressive, more corporative, if you wish, and they have very different expectations concerning what a CCCI must do. For some, CCCI must be the voice of the sector. It must represent the industry of international aid. So we have to help members to better represent them. For other members, it's a clearinghouse on programs and regions. For others, it's how to unify our voices together to multiply the impact of all of our experiences and be able to influence politics in Canada and everywhere in the world. And it won't be difficult to understand where is Interpares in this category of various expectations regarding CCCI. I always felt that for Interpares, when we ask Interpares to speak for the sector, they were not trying to come up with a branding. Interpares, we invested in our logo, in our name, we want to be known. No, they came with a desire to talk on behalf of the sector, shared values, things that unify us. And this is something that we clearly appreciated to our members, Interpares and a few other organizations that were able to speak on behalf of the whole sector. And so the singularity of Interpares is to use, if you may, the CCCI to use the advice, just like the definition of building a coalition. We are a coalition, we can put our efforts together to move forward public policies. And I remember it's because of Interpares that the CCCI developed a political group for Africa. They put a lot of work so that there was an Africa group that talked about politics and Canadian aid and foreign policies, Canadian foreign policies in Africa. So that's this work of creating, building coalitions, to be a player in these coalitions, is something that is built into our DNA, into Interpares DNA. It's like a way of being, of working with others. The working groups are an example, the contributions are an example. Another question that belongs to Interpares trademark is these relations are horizontal in this coalition. Interpares cannot take the lead. It's just a quiet leadership, as Brian used that expression. This idea of Interpares is very serious. It's taken seriously. It's equal relations between the staff and the board of directors. I live that as a member of the board. Equal relationship with partner organizations around the world, here with the NGOs in Canada. So we all have the same voice, but various means and various resources. And what is characteristic is also the idea of consensus. To reach consensus, it takes longer. Even as members of the board, sometimes we thought that there were questions that required a lot of time, that took a lot of our time with the staff. But when we get to the end of these discussions, we had a better decision. So I will say that these are characteristics of that I observed from Interpares in this coalition work. Thank you, Esperanza. It's interesting that you mentioned coalition. As we are celebrating 50 years of Interpares, Abidjan in the Côte d'Ivoire are celebrating their 20 years of operation, and the COPAGEN is the coalition to protect Africa's DNA genetic heritage. And it's against the introduction of GMO and for food sovereignty, and they had a huge impact to preserve the rights of farmers on their seeds, over the seeds. And it's because of this coalition work, there are a few in this room that were lucky enough to meet some activists from COPAGEN. And Brian, when Brian was mentioning one of the first initiatives of Interpares, it was the exchanges between farmers. It's a methodology that we are still using today with the Deccan Development Society in India, farmers in Western Africa, and it creates solidarity in the relationship of solidarity, and it had a huge impact for protecting the agricultural resources. And let me take this opportunity to shout out to the collaboration between Copagen and Interpares. I'm a member of the coordination group in Copagen. Copagen, as he says, is a coalition to protect the African genetic heritage that was put together to preserve our seeds, our African seeds that are very often hacked and stolen, and to fight against the introduction of GMOs. And it's been 21 years that this coalition exists and is fighting. It has 9 to 10 countries. It includes 9 to 10 countries in Western Africa. And Interpares was always there to help them with the programs and with their governance. So I can't pass that opportunity to mention that. And Interpares was also always represented by Eric in Copagen. So I know his humility is going to suffer, but I have to say it. I have to say it. He's like the godfather of Copagen, if you allow me, because if this event didn't happen, I'm pretty sure he would be in Abidjan to accompany the forum and the 20 years of Copagen. So thank you, Eric, for your support. And when you talk about the creation of the coalition, the co-creation, the respect of ideas of the partner, that's the Interpares approach that we really love, because everything we propose comes from us, and Interpares is accompanying. They're not imposing anything on us. We are encouraged to reflect, to think together, to share our ideas, and to draw conclusions together, to determine if it fits the guidelines of Interpares. Is Copagen getting something out of it? We are working together, we are growing together, and I'm proud to have known that with Copagen and Interpares, and I had to mention it today. It wouldn't be honest to forget. We cannot be ungrateful. We have to recognize Interpares has to continue working in that way, and it's the same thing with the women groups in the various projects where we did studies on the field to understand what is the reality of these women and how can we change the situation. Interpares didn't come with a program to say do it that way, that's what we want. No, we start with the reality of women and men, and we act together. So thank you for this. Thank you.
I'd like to give the word to Jamie now, because the work that you've been doing around organizing around resource extraction, mining, and earlier on you were talking about how context is so important when you're organizing. So I wonder if you could share a story of some of the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, all the work we do really is in coalitions, in networks, and it's built around those relationships, often at a very local level. So working with local community groups, traditional authorities, and regional NGOs and other structures as well, but really, playing that as an outsider role of coming and listening and trying to understand those relationships, building trust and confidence. And sometimes it takes a long time, or sometimes things are going really well and then something happens and you have to sort of step back for a while. And the dynamics can shift and so on. But in the end, what it means is being able to bring people together on their own terms. And that idea of, I maybe is pretentious to call it leadership, quiet leadership or whatever on our own part, but it's the same sense that Brian was talking about not trying to be a protagonist in the story, but being part of it, and providing what we can. We do have resources, we do have knowledge that we can bring to the table, but it's not any privileged sort of position. And so, going back to really the beginning years of the work of Mining Watch, these Canadian mining companies were moving into Guatemala and Honduras, and People were getting killed, people were getting poisoned, communities were being forcibly displaced. You know, the mining company would bulldoze a cemetery to expand the mine. It would, you know, bulldoze people's farms and so on. And so we worked with those communities. We worked with the church organizations, this being Honduras and Guatemala. There's very heavy pastoral influence, and so, you know, through all those networks, you know, we were able to bring complaints to the International Finance Corporation. Again, at another level, working in coalition with groups in Washington, D.C., who have those connections. You know, working with other Canadian groups, and bringing complaints to the company, to the Canadian government, who had no idea what we were talking about and still doesn't, even though we've been telling them for a really long time, extremely clearly, quite loudly at times, and they're able to really not hear that message. But you know, so what came out of that though was that then, you know, several years later, in the 2000s, when other Canadian mining companies were moving into El Salvador, the Salvadoran organizations could look at this and say, have we seen this before? And El Salvador doesn't have a mining history, but they were able, through the networks that were then established, to go to neighboring countries, Guatemala and Honduras, and ask people how these Canadian mining companies behave, what happens. And they decided that that kind of destructive influence was not something they wanted in their watersheds, in their communities, in their homes. And they organized and defeated the mining companies. And until last year, until Bukele revoked the legislation, they actually had a legislated ban on metal mining in El Salvador, because water is more precious than gold. And they have very little water, and giving that what they have up for the sake of gold for someone else's profit made no sense to the rural people of El Salvador, and indeed the city people either. So, you know, 70% of the country depends on one watershed for its water source, and it's not something you really want to mess with. But, you know, the thread through all of that, again, is the sense of building relationships and building connections so that they're there when you need them. And I was thinking of a quote, or well, actually a tract written by the late Diné artist, activist, anarchist Clea Ben Ali, which is called "Accomplices, Not Allies."
Sorry. The folks here on the stage have an incredible history in terms of organizing, in terms of facing authoritarian contexts. The history in some of these countries is quite complex, and in all our countries actually is very complex. Colonialism, patriarchy, and the context today, of course, everyone is kind of wondering what is going on. The world is spinning out of control. And so we're all trying to make sense of it, and having an event like this tonight where we can actually share some stories we thought would be super important. So the fact that it's our 50th, sure, but also what we wanted to do is create some space to kind of share some wisdoms about the struggles that we've some wisdoms that came out of the struggles. And so I'm going to ask our panelists here, just as a final round, and then you're not off the hook. Then you're going to be asked the same question. But what are some wisdoms that you'd like to share from your years of shared struggle for social justice and feminist futures? How about I inverse the order? Jamie, if you don't mind, can we start with you?
You took away my thinking time.
Oh, well, I don't want to. I can adapt.
No, it's fine. Well, because I was pondering, you know, out of all of this, what I really want to highlight, and you know, I was thinking back to a group I was working with in Costa Rica, and we were training, basically, we called it a training session, but it was working with Indigenous, mostly youth from across the territory, training in law and environmental regulations and so on, all based on the mining interests that we're pushing into the territory. So how we're going to build the capacity to oppose this. And so we said, well, we need to give these people these tools and bring in experts and our anthropologists and lawyers and specialists to present and go to the mining registry and find out, look at the maps and find out where those properties actually are, so that we could then go out to the communities and say, did you know that your farm is claimed by a Canadian mining company, and here's the docket, and we put the map up on the wall, and they kind of say, no, that's my farm. But part of that was really developing those community diagnostics, but what we were trying to do was build that sense of common interest in using that knowledge, but bringing it back to the communities and integrating it with their own diagnostic. Like, what are the issues that they're facing? Because every community had its own problems, and depending on where they were situated in relation to commercial interests and poaching and illegal logging and all kinds of things. Some with conflicts between communities over specific resources, for instance. But the thing that I always come back to is we would have these learning sessions with the experts or a legal session or something, and we'd talk about, okay, where are we going? What community are we going to go into and be hosted next? And there would be, there was somebody from that community to be the liaison, to be the link and the local organizer. And we'd say, okay, so we know a little bit about what the issues are there, and we'll try and prepare as best we can. And I would always tell them, we'd have all this stuff up on the blackboard. And I'd say, okay, now we're going to forget that. We're going to go and listen. And it was very powerful. And we heard some amazing things, and we brought back some really strong proposals for action and collective response that we could bring then to the local authorities to say, okay, this is what people are asking for. And it was a fun, I just love the idea of being as prepared as possible, and then putting that aside and approaching with open hands and an open heart.
Thanks, Jamie. Let's approach it with humility. Put the expert aside and approach with humility and listening, hard listening. Yeah. Esperanza, est-ce que tu aimerais partager peut-être?
Esperanza, would you like to share a little bit of wisdom based on all your struggles and your fights? When I read this mandate, and a reflection that inhabited me, that came to me after all these years in this world, in this community, and during the hard times that we're in and that we have been, but it's even worse right now. But as a reflection from a French philosopher, Edgar Morin, who is now 103 years old and is still thinking. And he says that it's important to accept uncertainty. We live in a climate of uncertainty, we have to accept it, and life is an ocean of uncertainty. And we are navigating this sea of uncertainty among islands of certainty, where we stop once in a while, to fill up, to get some supplies. I like this idea because we all have to choose to pick which islands of certainty we're going to choose, where we're going to go and get supplies and feed ourselves. And I consider myself lucky because I had quite a few islands of certainty, and one of them was Interpares. Interpares, I came to the meeting to feed myself, to meet fantastic people with whom we had great conversations, and I came out of these meetings motivated, happy to have been there and belonging to a community. So organizations like Interpares and others don't ask if we go or we stop, we give up. We can't give up. We have to continue to resist. We have to continue to do what we do, and that's what we do best.
Continue à résister. Guy, how about you?
Yes, I know it's an awful world today. Who could imagine? But what I think is happening is that these demagogues and autocrats are weaponizing our differences and convincing us that there's no way that we can reach across those differences. And in so doing, they're polarizing us, they're dividing us. And really, there are no real unities, because I think we have to recognize that we are people, and because of that, we are going to be different. We're not homogeneous, we're heterogeneous in so many ways. But as an old activist, and I think these would be also the activists I've met at Interpares, we oppose to that the idea that no matter how different we are in the end equal human beings. And it is that basic equality that we always propose and say, beyond race, beyond class, beyond sex, which is different to me to sexual orientation, which is different in my sense to gender identity, and other markers, and of course, that there is a possibility and a world that we have been building for, and many before us, of real equality. And to me, that is what solidarity means. It's not saying we are the same, or that we are all united on some grand march towards socialism, whatever. It isn't that. It really is that we can cross borders of identity, of class, of nationality, of geographical, national, whatever, and talk to each other. And in this sense, all politics is coalitional. Because we come to, some people call it compromise, but that sounds like cooptation. But it's the constructed knowledge of people talking together and saying, we're going to do this. And I think this is our answer to the demagogues who are weaponizing differences in order to keep us fighting each other. In truth, there's a very small group of human beings on this planet who win from that. And the large majority of human beings in this planet will win if we can look at solidarity and really get strength from our diversity. My criticism of our own left movement, sometimes we say diversity, but we don't really give it the respect and the hard work that implies for all of us. So that's my first part. The other thing is, this is the last time I'm going to speak for today to you. And I would like to bring you not just the congratulations of the people back home, but also the joy that we feel when we work together and with you. And that's the other thing. Nothing can be so desperate that it can make our women in the communities, our young people, our staff members in our offices really be sad for very, very long. And that's also what I remember about the Interpares office. Coming there and messing everybody out. Insisting on, where are my cookies? And telling them, do not work, I am here. Right? And someone quoted me to me, and I thought, wow, what a great quote, until they said, that's what you said. And what I said is, if there's no joy in your struggle, you don't belong in my revolution. So thank you.
Thank you, Guy. Miami.
Merci.
Thank you.
Comme sagesse,
As a matter of wisdom, over my 30 years of operation in my country, I've worked with in public administration and also as a project leader, project manager, financed by international NGOs. So what I retain from all these 30 years of work is that these projects were financed by in a kind of a prescriptive way. So we are benefiting from that, and we will bring aid to us, you see. So meeting Inter-Paris led me to see things differently through different eyes, which has marked me forever, and which I also want to share with everybody, this respect of the other, because we don't call us beneficial. We talk about partners. That's very deep. That's because deep partners means we're together. We're equal. We share. We are equal. That's deep. That's deep. Because Burkina Faso was classified as a poor country, eternal aid receiver, and we don't try to understand, we just give, and nobody ever called us a partner as such. So we are beneficiaries of aid. And we have nothing to do with receive, and they tell us to put it in agriculture, animal husbandry, school, and that kind of stuff. But with Inter-Paris, respect, total respect is the core of everything, because we come from an approach where we talk together and we see what we can do together. Even the initial idea was defined by Inter-Paris, it's adapted to a condition, a local condition. That's something that marks me profoundly. It's not just in the program, but the whole behavior, entire behavior of the Inter-Paris personnel. What I knew and what I know, I knew Eric Fernand, Yup, and all of these people. Geneva were always close to us. Even the way they talk to us, the way they discuss of us, we feel this respect. And to me, that's a major wisdom that we need to maintain. We should never break this at all. Second, the durability of these relations, relations of cooperation, working at work, cooperation at work, which is defined to last forever. Because I know, and I know Inter-Paris has said, I've known it for 20 years now, and it's always in the context of programs, activities that last. And that is very important, because we're not looking to sugarcoat and have all kinds. We want profound change, and this change is based on the shoulders of women. And that's what touches me personally, because I fight a lot for equality between men and women. And Inter-Paris is at the very core of this approach, this work that we do, and building equality between men and women. It's a major factor for us, because everything is based on the shoulders of women. And when we talk about if women stop working, the world is going to collapse, right? That's a fact. That's a fact. So if we work to make sure there's equality between men and women, that means that the women's knowledge will be considered, women's knowledge will be taken into consideration, and everything they do is going to be taken into consideration at the same time as is done for men, and the men and the whole world is going to. That's possible. See, so the idea of resisting with all the changes and which are happening right now and which are threatening us, we need to resist all of this in order to. It's just to borrow the word you said. We have to resist everything and be resilient, which is a word, an expression that's very dear to me, because we are going through, my country is going through a very difficult terrorist situation, and this resilience should be available everywhere in every sector. And every Inter-Paris has given us the opportunity to do this with the various programs and the various projects that we're putting in place in our country. With equality from above, equality of everybody, ecology, that kind of stuff, led by women. The Food Organ, FAO, climate change, and West Africa. So these projects show where women are responsible and are part to be able to change situations as they go. We're using agroecology, climate change, and that. For that, I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart, in the name of all those various actors, every man and woman, I want to thank Inter Paris for all its participants, all its members, all its partners who support us and who accompany us with all the respect that is due, that they bring to us. This touches me profoundly, and I say thank you. Thank you. I would like that this will continue. I don't know, for 50, in the next 50 years, I won't be there, but the others will be able there to live this in 50 years. So long life to Inter Paris. Long life to Inter Paris.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to invite you now to, if you feel moved, to share some wisdoms with us about, in these times that are complex, how do you find hope, and how, through your struggles, some things that you've learned that you'd like to share with us. So there's a couple of mics that can circulate. We got Pat Mooney.
Well, I have a question, really, but hopefully it'll go somewhere. 20 years ago, at an earlier Inter Pares anniversary, Brian told us about a conversation he had with his son, and how his son had said, well, there's no point in planning for anything because the world's coming to an end anyways. And Brian's response, as I recall, was that, well, that may be, but wouldn't be bad to have a plan B just in case. And I think I want to know what Brian's plan B is now, and Inter Pares. But I think we are at a time when plan A for civil society and social movements has been so cynical and depressed that we seem to be able to believe the most fantastically bad things about our planet and our future, and not have the space to think about what could be done if the fascists fail or stumble, or if we work a bit better and more effectively, how could we make a better planet? And I think that's where the job is now, is to have that plan B that gets us to a better place. And I'm wondering where Inter Pares is on that, because I think we do need that kind of leadership.
So, thanks, Pat. Yeah, and yeah. Did anybody want to respond to Pat's? Yeah. Okay. So, does anybody have a response to Pat's question? Yeah? Are there, okay, I've got another intervention there. Yes?
My response is that what we've been doing has confronted many difficult situations at local, national, regional, and international levels. And in many ways, we have to do more of what we've been doing, what Inter Pares has been doing. I think that we live in a world where rights have gone wrong, and the practical approach of doing and learning by doing that Inter Pares is such an example of needs to continue. And what we need to do is determine how we can help to give more visibility and more opportunity to the very situations that we would like to see changed. So I don't think it's a matter of doing something different, but we have to contextualize it in the current context and figure out how to do more of what we've been doing to our best.
Mm-hmm. 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 Great. It's okay.
So what I've been doing this evening is listening. And listening to what does Mother Earth say. So I've been in the climate world for a long time. And part of that work has been action, very much focused on action, and little time for time and space. And so what I heard this evening is Inter Pares is the quiet leader, but very more than that. And so the offer that I give to everybody here this evening is, as we listen, how do we listen? And where does circle play in that listening? Because the earth is listening to what we are doing, and we can listen to the Mother Earth. And so how do we use that part of the work that we've been doing with Inter Pares for 50 years to actually focus on ourselves now? And in doing that, and taking time and space, the actions that we take will have even more important meaning.
Molly, you see?
Thank you. When Pat Mooney talked about the 30th, it brought back a memory of what Pat said at the time about what was characteristic of revealing what we got wrong. And Pat was talking about putting seeds in vaults instead of taking care of farmers who care for seeds. But like many things Pat says, it stays in my mind. And I think that one of the things that Inter Pares for me was such a place of learning. What Brian said resonated a lot. And I think in terms of the question about where we are today, that willingness to say maybe we got it wrong is really important. Not as a source of blame or feeling bad, but learning. And how not, like how would we not have gotten it wrong, and being willing to keep trying again. And I think we're living in a time of some really hard reckonings with trends that have been there for a very long time. So this idea that suddenly the world's getting complicated and suddenly we're dealing with colonialism and suddenly ethnic cleansing and all these things that are horrifying and authoritarianism, no, they've been with us for a long time. And so I think what we have as a moment together in a place like this is to share that moment. And that's come through a lot in terms of the value of coalition, the value of working together, collaboration. And I think that is something that has been enduring and needs to endure. And that's what I'm hearing tonight as well. So I salute all of you, and I thank you for the inspiration tonight too.
Get the angle right. So just, I think a related observation, because a little bit what not necessarily what was intended, but what I heard in the question, I've heard elsewhere or hear often as well, and it's a bit about the dialectic. I've been asked the question, well, are you an optimist or a pessimist in the face of it all? Right, I got to remember, sorry. Yeah, I was getting this wrong earlier. And somewhat pompously, I guess, I admit, my response is, well, I'm neither. I like to think of myself as an activist. And it's not about pessimism or optimism. If you get caught in that, then that leads to inaction. And as an activist, I've always felt that what I share with other activists is a commitment to action. And that's the basis of, well, our solidarity. And on that basis, there's a strength. And regardless of the issue that we might individually be drawn to, the fact that we're drawn to action, the fact that we're drawn to activism, the fact that we're drawn to change is what binds us, which I think is a theme that's come out consistently as well. So it's not to say that these moments are not fairly overwhelming, but I think linking to other comments that have been made this evening as well, that sense of separation and is something that is being actively, the polarization. And I think the act of resistance is just to dismiss that, for me, is to dismiss that argument in the first place, is to say, no, I don't see that. I don't play on that, in that paradigm. And I don't disagree, obviously, with anything that's been said, but I do think, yeah, we keep moving forward in activism and in solidarity, and you don't necessarily need to know the outcome. I think it's also a strong tenet of Inter Paris's history and DNA, that it's through the process that we'll get to the end. We don't know what the outcome is going to be, and we can't control it. What we can control is how we act in this world, and it's through our actions and shared action that one step at a time we'll get there. That's personal belief and reflection, and I've been incredibly fortunate to be playing a side role in Inter Paris as a board member for a number of years now, and as a contributor and fan for many more. And I hope to still be around in one form or another for another, well, not 50, as Guy said, but, you know, maybe a little while longer.
Thanks, Michael. We've got the time for maybe one more. I see Jean's got your microphone. Yep.
Yeah, and what I might say keeps changing as I hear what people are saying. I'm really I'm feeling overwhelmed by the moment we live in at the moment, and I was so appreciative of the history that you all reminded me of. And Jamie, if I can take any credit at all for the brilliant person you are, I am delighted to do that, Jamie. But my question is this: how can this approach of Inter Paris, the solidarity, the respect, the humility, how do we bring that to this current moment that is so unlike all of that? I mean, we've got, we've got fascists who are dressing themselves up as Democrats. And I guess for me, the question, and I would ask it particularly of Guy and Myriam May, who have lived through really very, very difficult times, dictatorships, repression, others as well, and others in the room, I'm sure. But how, those are important ways to live. We've all spent our lives trying to reflect those values in the way we live. But it seems like the moment we are facing in the world at the moment is really profoundly different from some of what we've dealt with in the past. As Molly says, not so different in many ways too. I mean, the trends we've been seeing them for a long time. But I guess I would ask how these qualities can be brought strongly and with impact to the moment that we're now facing. And I'm putting you on the spot, but I feel like we're in a moment that's different from, qualitatively different from the times we've lived in the past. And so I would be really interested in knowing how you two on the stage, but also others, in addition to patting ourselves on the back and saying, hasn't it been fabulous? I agree, it has been. I mean, the work we've done together has been life-affirming, but the moment we live in is not. And I guess I'm asking, how you reflect on this moment and the gap between how we've tried to build international solidarity and what we're now faced with. That's a bit of a cri de coeur, I guess, but.
Thanks, Jean. So I'm just, part of my mind is on the clock, and I know that if we're doing this, we're going to stay a bit longer together, but I think if people feel comfortable doing that, let's take a bit more time to reflect. So Jean's asked a question, particularly of Guy and Marie-Aimée, if you're comfortable responding to Jean's question. And then if other people, I saw Feroz also had his hand up in reaction. And then after that, we'll see how we are. See, there might be another question. So, all right. Okay, so, c'est ça. Did you want to...
Je voulais dire simplement que sa question est tellement pertinente que nous sommes dans un tournant décisif.
The question is so relevant. We are in a key point in this current world. There's a lot of uncertainty. We don't know where we're going. Solidarity is disappearing, but we have to get our act together, or humanity is going to vanish if we don't. Without solidarity, without mutual respect, without getting rid of inequities, we cannot survive. We have to fight to maintain these elements of what we already built, what we already acquired. If not, uncertainty is too deep, and in Africa, we are even more uncertain because we've the type of domination that we are victim of, even when we are trying to express ourselves, to try to reclaim our sovereignty, is always problematic. We are threatened from all over the place because we are trying to reclaim our sovereignty. And I bring back to the global level. It's the same problem everywhere. There are conflicts everywhere. There is a lot of violence and crime, and it's worrisome. We have to fight. And as we believe in these values and we work on these values, we have to resist. I want to insist on this word, and how to resist is to continue working and to believe that the perpetrators of these disturbances and violence will end up following us, because if we give up and we give in to them, it will be catastrophic. There has to be a core that is resisting and continues to share these values, to act along these values so that the world gets better. It doesn't seem that important, but we have to continue. And it's this strong engagement that we have to show. We have to continue the work no matter what. If not, we're never going to get out of it. We're not going to look at the world fall apart without doing anything. Future generations will have what? Everyone has to understand that they are there to contribute something to humanity, and humanity must be better because of our contribution. There's no small action in our family, in our neighborhood, in the community. We need to act in a way that will bring others to reflect, to have an introspection, and to say, I have to do like this other person who is working for more peace, love, solidarity, and co-creation between us. I think that's the answer.
Merci, Marie-Aimée.
Thank you, Marie-Aimée.
Guy, can we have a reaction? And after that, because we do have a time limit, and Sam will be doing some closing remarks, but my suggestion is that we continue to mill around and talk and discuss. So maybe one last reaction from Guy, and then we'll invite Sam for some closing remarks.
Yeah, my answer is part political analysis, part practical stuff, and part optimism. I really think we are at a different stage of capitalism. My Marxist leanings have come out. and that's why we're seeing this seemingly way of doing politics. So the political one, I have written a paper on this, and I will Inter Pares, about how about it's widespread all over the world. The governments are merely just ways by which they're accounting large amounts of profit that are moving through various centers and focal points of capitalist exploitation. Okay, that sounded like me 20 years ago when I was still a Maoist. Okay, the practical thing is, if indeed we are facing a capitalism with a really global face, because it is now, because of the IT revolution, et cetera, then what Interpares is doing in terms of real international solidarity has to be uplifted, has to be done even more. We have to continue doing what we have been doing. That's important. What is also important is what I said earlier. We have to work even harder at solidarity, because the super concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few billionaires allows us this wonderful opportunity, if we can do it, to really be more united than we've ever been globally, listening to the earth and Mother Earth, as we said. We're even more likely to need to cross borders and to come to unities. So that's the one. But I am reminded that in every new era, in every turn of the world with massive social changes, there have always been monsters, and the generations before us have always managed to confront those monsters, which goes back to my point. We need to talk, we need to figure these things out, but if history is any guide, we will be able to figure this out together.
Thank you, Guy. So I'll invite Sam to make some closing remarks.
Wow, quel bel partage. Donnons-nous une belle...
With sharing, let's applaud our speakers today, all of them. I know that some did not have the opportunity to ask questions or to share, and I encourage you to stay behind afterwards so that you can ask them directly. The themes that came out from this panel on feminism, long-term relationships, consultation, international networking, common knowledge and learning, resilience, as Marie-Aimée called it, that really sums up Interpares' story and what it is. I always found that it's quite a gift of Interpares that we can meet people who grew up somewhere else in the world in a different context, but they withdrew from these experiences the same values and the same political opinion. Instead of letting demagogues turn our differences into weaponizing our differences, we rely on our experiences, on a common fight. The domination of our society is different with different faces, but resistance and creativity are the same, as well as our shared dreams for a better world. Thank you to all of you and to create together an island of certainty, as Esperanza said. I'd like to thank people who made it possible, our speakers, our interpreters, Godlove and Laurent, our photographer, Marine, Ottawa's Art Gallery for welcoming us, you, online, thank you for being our community. Thank you to our donors, in particular, many of you today, in particular Global Affairs Canada, for the past half century, your financial support has helped us with our solidarity with the social movements across the world. It's because of you that we have accomplished so much, and during this political moment that sees people, the countries better equipped, this solidarity is international aid is even more important than ever. In particular, our allies and long-date partners, you are at the core of our work. Thank you for being with us for so many years.
Votre main ensemble, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you.
Et sur ça, je vous
So I wish you a wonderful rest of the evening and the moment you're going to spend socializing with us.
also, Interpares members, there's a desire for a group photo, so please don't leave.